Hi everyone, this is Aditya Sharma. I'll be your host today. And thank you all for joining us in this webinar, Career in Energy Sector. So before we get started, I'd like to share some guidelines and information about structure of this webinar. So today's webinar is in the Q&A structure so that you can ask questions during the webinar. And here's our agenda. So we'll spend first few minutes to introduce you to High Counselor and with our host. And then we'll spend 45 minutes for the Q&A session with our guest speaker. During this Q&A session, by default, you all will be muted. But you can always ask questions by using this chat functionality. And you can go to the participants list and you can use the option of raise your hand. So as soon as you raise your hand, I'll unmute you or you can unmute yourself and then you can ask questions. Okay. So before we turn into our guest speaker, I'd like to introduce you to High Counselor. So we are High Counselor, an online platform where we help job seekers and students land their dream job by connecting them with the industry experts and the working professionals in their dream company. I'm sure you all must be aware that getting direct coaching from someone working in your dream company can dramatically increase your chances of not just getting job into your dream company, but also ensuring whether that job is a right fit for you or not. So today I'd like to welcome our guest speaker, Sreeram Bhargav Dhurjati, who is a senior sales engineer, energy products at Tesla. Okay, prior to Tesla, Sreeram has worked with some of the global companies like Alstom Power, Level Solar, and New York City Housing Authority. So thanks again, Sreeram, for joining us today. So Sreeram, if you can turn on your video, and it would be great if you can tell us about your background, about your professional experience.
Yeah, thanks, Aditya. Can you hear me properly?
Perfect, yes.
Cool, yeah. Thanks everyone for taking your time to join this webinar. Really looking forward to share my experience, and I really understand that a year and a half back, I was in your shoes trying to land my dream job, and yeah, it's a tough process, and more than happy to share through whatever steps I took to get the job that I am at Tesla. And just to share some details about my background, so I did my bachelor's in instrumentation and control engineering back in India. And then post graduation, I started working for a OEM, original equipment manufacturer for power equipment called Alstom. And I was within their steam turbine division, and my responsibility was to design and develop control system logics for thermal power plants. So during that process, I always felt that energy is a very important part of each and every person's life. You see a society developing once they start getting access to energy. You can walk outside, get your schools operational, get your farms operational. It's a big part of life, and without it, you cannot function on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, it's extremely important that you need to make that in a sustainable manner so that future generations and the current atmosphere as well is protected. So energy is important, but it needs to be generated in a renewable, from a renewable source, which doesn't pollute the environment. So that was my idea, that I wanted to transition from typical coal-fired or oil-fired energy engineer to somebody who is working on renewable energy projects. And that's what motivated me to come to US to pursue a master's degree, to learn more about renewable energy sector and find a career within that. So I did my master's in engineering management from Duke University, and now I'm currently working as a senior sales engineer at Tesla. And my job role is to work with customers, be it Fortune 500 or 1000 C&I customers, or big utilities such as PG&E, Southern California ITC, and National Grid, to develop renewable energy projects. And that could range from different types of renewable energy projects: wind, solar, wind plus storage only projects or microgrids all across the world. So being an engineer within the sales function, I work with my customer to define their technical requirements and make sure that the product that we sell is a good fit for their facilities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sreeram, for sharing your background. Really appreciate it. So, what excites you about career in energy sector?
Well, to start with, you can make a direct impact on the customer's life. So a power plant that you would build would power up millions of homes at the same time. So it's a direct impact on the person on ground, and that is something you typically don't see in any other industry. Say, for example, you're working for a software company, your particular job role would be restricted to one product or one snippet of a code within that product, and you don't actually see what's the final outcome of your hard work. But out here, you work on a project, you design a project, or you sell a project, an energy project. It makes a direct impact, and within 1 year or 2 years, when the project gets built, then you get the thrill of seeing that, yes, I worked on that project. And I feel that's a great motivator for me on a day-to-day basis. And then it's the largest industry that is present in the whole world, and it's undergoing a lot of change from a centralized power generation industry to a distributed power generation industry. And people who are working within the energy industry at this point of time are part of that transition and are leading that transition. So one, you work towards a greater goal, and then you are in a very dynamic state within that particular industry. So that's what excites me.
Perfect. That's really, really wonderful. So today we have a lot of our participants who are college students who are about to graduate in a year or maybe year and a half, and they're really interested in getting started in the energy sector. So what skills are needed for entry-level positions in energy industry?
Well, it would depend on the type of industry. So in energy industry as well, you have oil and gas, nuclear, renewable energy. It depends on the interest of the person as to which of these sectors does he or she wants to get into. And then within these industries, you have multiple roles, starting from an electrical or a mechanical engineer who would primarily be working in designing these projects or either operating these projects. Or then if somebody is interested in more analytical role, they can join consulting companies where they advise these big oil and gas companies or renewable energy companies as to what would be the size of the project and where should they build that project and how to finance that project. So that is an additional avenue that people can explore. Or you have more general roles which you can typically apply a broader skill set, say sales or sales engineering, where you need a balance of your engineering knowledge as well as good customer facing skills, where you directly interact with the customer to sell the product that your energy company is making. Or a product management sort of role where you work with your sales team and your engineering team to develop a product pipeline and then put out a product within the energy industry. So there are varied roles that incoming energy enthusiasts can look into. So more than happy to touch base on some of those aspects as to how to get in those sort of roles.
Mm-hmm. That's very helpful. So Sreeram, as you mentioned that candidates can also look for consulting companies. So do you mean companies like Deloitte, PwC, Big Four? Do they also have roles in the energy sector?
So these Big Four companies definitely have an energy consulting arm, but it's typically very small. But if you look at companies such as PA Consulting, Navigant Consulting, ICF, Rocky Mountain Institute. So if you just Google top energy consulting firms, you'll get a big list. And most of these companies typically cater to oil and gas companies, where they tell them what should be the price at which they should price out their barrel of oil, or what would be the next best investment with their oil rig, or how should they finance that oil rig and all of that stuff. And there are very renewable energy focused companies as well, which consult to project developers or utilities as to how to solve a technical problem within their supply chain or distribution network, and how should they finance those sort of projects. So yes, these big four companies have an energy consulting arm, but they're typically very small because that's not their main bread and butter. But there are varied energy consulting companies whose main bread and butter is renewable energy or oil and gas consulting. And some of the companies that I mentioned are big players within that market. ICF, PA Consulting, Navigant Consulting, Rocky Mountain Institute, Charles Rivers Associates, BCV, McKinsey also has that consulting arm, but it's typically smaller as compared to these companies.
Perfect. That is very helpful. So what are the challenges associated with career in energy sector so that a newcomer can get prepared in advance and he can do very well in his career?
The main challenge I feel is that most of the roles within this energy is very specific. If you take out consulting, which in itself is a very small subset of the global energy business or global energy jobs, most of the job requires specific skill set. And if you typically come out of college, you 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 tend to take a broader view where you take in all of different subjects, which give you a really good exposure, but do not let you specialize in one particular matter. So, say for example, if you join a nuclear energy company, it's a power plant operator, nuclear power plant operator. If they want an instrumentation and control engineer, then they will require somebody with an instrumentation control engineering background, with a specific knowledge of what are the control mechanisms using which they can control a particular process or something like that. In consulting roles which typically tend to require a broader skill set, that also is pretty focused because you need to have a really good knowledge of how the energy sector works within US. So for a candidate who is coming straight out of college and wants to pursue a career within the energy sector, I would encourage him or her to get a really good background of how the US energy industry works. What are the different levels of energy generation, transmission, distribution, supply? What are the challenges that the current US industry is facing? And what are the opportunities that companies, be it the utilities who are operating those industry or outside companies, have to solve the major challenges within the energy industry? So yes, you need a broad skill set. Yes, you need technical knowledge, but you also need to have a broad overview of the energy industry within the sector. And what I find is most of the students don't put in effort to learn about that industry. So that's a big challenge that people face.
That makes sense. And we have received one question from one of our participants. It's what's the good example of an attractive resume for career in energy sector, and should it be limited to one page?
Again, a resume is attractive if you tailor to that particular job role that you're applying to. So if you're applying to product manager role, associate product manager role, and your resume shows experience that tailored to something else, a recruiter would look at that and feel that he or she is not a good fit for this role because they do not have relevant experience within that particular field. And when I say experience, it's through internships or the projects that you do at your university. So irrespective of any sector that you apply to, the most important part is tailor your resume to the job role that you're applying to, rather than using an all-fit resume to apply for multiple jobs. So the basic thumb of rule with respect to a resume is, if your experience is less than 5 years within the industry, you should stick to one page. Anything more than that, it doesn't adversely affect your application per se, but you feel the recruiter or a person who is reviewing your resume may feel that you're boosting up more than what you are required to, or you're putting in a experience that is more than what is required for an entry level job. And if there are any specific projects or any specific reports or papers that you have worked on and you want to highlight and you feel that is very relevant to that particular role, then use that as part of your portfolio that you would submit in an application. So keep your resume aside and then use your project list or a project report as a part of your portfolio rather than putting all of that in the resume and extending the length of it.
Okay, that's amazing. So what kind of workshop or projects can students do while they are in school to make their students better candidate for a career in energy sector?
I would again say it would depend on the role within the energy industry that you're looking at. Say, for example, if I take my example, I wanted to become, or I wanted to work in a role that's in intersection between engineering as well as finance slash sales. Uh, so what I tried doing was take up subjects that would help me develop my knowledge base within these two aspects. So for the technical side, I wanted to get into renewable energy industry. So I took up classes which actually dealt into the technical details of photovoltaic cells, energy storage. And then for the finance side, I took up specific classes in energy finance, project finance. And then the workshops that I typically used to attend was at Duke, they used to do case studies where a project developer is trying to put up a project, a big solar plus storage project within a particular utility area to solve an X problem. So they asked us as part of the case study to propose a technical solution and find ways to finance that project. So those sort of workshops where you have a good mix of what skill set that you want to develop is something that you can look over. And then in terms of subjects as well within your university, take those subjects which would help you develop the skill set that you want to develop for the role that you finally intend to work at.
Okay, perfect. We have received one more question on the chat. So this question is, what's the most stressful part of your job?
Well, at Tesla, it's pretty stressful, that's for sure. Reason being, it's very fast paced and the self deadlines that we have, the goals that we set ourselves are pretty ambitious. And that what that translates to is that a person has a lot more responsibility as compared to a typical engineer or somebody else in that particular role would have in any other company, and he or she needs to deliver that within a very short period of time and a very strict deadline. So that's pretty stressful. But that being said, again, in an energy industry, you know that at the end of the day, the hours you put in or the work that you put in directly leads to something tangible as a benefit to the overall good. So you don't mind those stressful hours or stressful days.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what are the common interview questions or the topics asked during interview for positions in energy sector? Are there specific topics that one can prepare, or is there any specific interview structure that one should be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So typically, and this is something that it's stemming from my experience at Tesla. Typically, whenever a candidate applies for a job, so we have multiple rounds of interview. Initially, it starts with an HR round where the recruiter reaches out to the candidate and then checks the motivation and the fit in terms of whether this candidate fits or is a good fit for the company or not. And how do you check that is ask him or her more about why he or she wants to join the company, what motivates him or her to actually work within the energy industry, and what do you as a candidate would bring to the table for that company, and how would you help solve some of the challenges that the company is trying to solve within this particular industry. So to prepare for that initial round, what you need to do is read up everything that you can on the company, go through the website. There, almost all of the companies put in a lot of content as well as videos on their website as well as their Facebook or Twitter page, which you can scroll through to understand what they are actually doing. And at the same time, second thing that you can do is prepare a good story as to why you really want to get into that company and why that particular industry that you have chosen. And then at the end of that interview, reiterate as to why you are a good fit for that company, and look at the company culture and try to match your work ethic and your work style with the company culture, and stress upon the skill set that you bring to the table and how would that be helpful for the company and for that particular role. And then in the subsequent rounds, we have one technical interview where, depending upon the role, we ask questions pertinent to that particular role. So for me, it was sales engineer. So my job role was to convince customer to take in the energy products that Tesla makes and solve some of the technical challenges that they have. So my interviewer went through some of the case studies and asked me to walk through the problem solving process. What are the questions that you would understand? Ask the customer to understand the key problem. What is the technical solution that you would propose, and how a Tesla product can be helpful within that particular solution. And then you have an in-person interview. Typically, there are 4 or 5 rounds. And then that interview panel consists of the different teams that you would be working with. Within my particular role, I had to interview with a product manager, a sales manager, a finance associate, my co-worker, and my hiring manager. So again, what they do is ask a lot of questions pertinent to that role. So if you're an electrical engineer who is trying to apply for a job, make sure that your concepts are pretty strong within that particular field. And then they try to gauge as to how you would work well, whether you would work well with the other team members or not. So bring out specific examples from your projects or internship experiences where you have collaborated with cross-functional teams to solve some particular problem, while stressing upon the technical skills that you have used while solving that problem. So if you can convince people that you can work well with others, you're not a jerk in doing so, as well as you're technically sound, then it would go a long way to make a very positive impression during your interview process.
Great. And I think this whole process would be very, very helpful for a lot of people. So here I'd like to take a pause and allow our participants to ask questions. So if anyone has any question, you can unmute yourself and ask that question directly from Sreeram. Or you can put the question in the chat. Okay, so we have received one question here. So Sreeram, what was your job search strategy when you're applying to Tesla? Because it's a really, really competitive job search market. So what, according to you, is the best strategy to apply for these positions?
I would say network as much as you can, build relationships. So the person who referred me to a job was working in a different company. It was called Sun Edison, where I actually reached out to him in 2015. But I stayed in constant touch with him, told him what are the subjects that I'm taking, what are the projects that I'm doing, what sort of internship that I'm working on, and stayed in touch with that person for almost 2 years. And then we finally shifted to Tesla. And when a role that I was looking at opened up, and he was somehow knew the hiring manager for that particular role, he referred me, and then through the interview process, I got through it and then got the job. So the one thing that I would very much stress upon is network. And how would you network is a good question. How would you reach out to a stranger uh, and build a relationship? So that's always through shared interest that you share with him or her. So when I reached out to this person, I was really interested in the role that he was working with. So I tried setting up an informational interview and then asked him questions relevant to his day-to-day experience as well as the preparation he did to get into that particular sort of role. Uh, so start with identifying what and where you want to work for, and then reach out to specific people on LinkedIn to try connect with them, and then try getting information interviews and ask relevant pertinent questions so that you yourself learn what is the preparation that you need to be successful at that role, and also develop a professional relationship with that particular person so that he or she helps you out whenever something or some role comes up. So when you speak to him, don't just ask that, okay, refer me to a particular job. Understand his role, understand his job, understand his journey, and then try working on projects and taking up subjects that would help you fit in that particular role that you're looking to get a job. At the same time, what else I did was develop my particular skill set, took up courses that were relevant to the role that I was looking at, wrote out reports which would form a part of my portfolio. And then whenever I used to reach out to people, then in my email, I used to say that I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I've seen that your company is working on so and so projects. I've seen an open role within this company. Want to learn more about that. And here is what my relevant experience is, and here is what I've worked on as previously, which would set me up for success within this particular role. And most of the time, I've seen people respond to my request and take out some time to chat with me. And then during the process, when I get a chance to do an information interview with that person, then I put my best foot forward by preparing well for that particular interview, knowing everything that I can about that company, knowing everything that I can about the role, and asking relevant, pertinent questions that would show to the interviewer that you are interested and you know what you're talking about.
So when nothing is working, do networking.
Yeah, I think start with networking, then everything will work out. I wouldn't say. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely right. Okay, so we have one question from Quen. So what was one of the most difficult technical problems you have had to solve in your career?
Well, I can't really go about describing that problem, but typically, the key challenge that comes while working this sort of role is each company has their product, and especially for Tesla has its own product, Power Pack and Powerwall, and they have a particular set of features which work on most of the applications that we try to sell this product into. But then each customer is unique in themselves and they have their own technical challenges, and you need to work with them so that you tailor your product to meet their technical challenges and then make the sale. But typically within this energy sector, most of the customers are public or investor-owned utilities, and then they have this competitive RFP process in which you bid, you submit your proposal as part of the RFP process, and then hope you win. And while submitting this proposal, that proposal should be tailored to that particular requirement. And because these are big utilities and they have very specific problems to solve, it is generally very tough to tailor your product to meet all of the criteria. So you have a very short deadline in which you need to submit your proposal, but at the same time, you need to submit a proposal that's compliant with their requirements. So the biggest challenge I face within this role is to work with my engineering team to tailor the overall product in a very short period of time so that we are compliant with the RFP requirement and we put our best foot forward while submitting our proposal. So that is the challenge that I face, and th- that that is the most part of the biggest challenge that I face at my job.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have one more question from Sophia. How to develop interpersonal skills in a company and the work office?
Um,
Maybe,
it's similar.
maybe we can you can discuss about the leadership and the team skills that are needed for this position, or any other interpersonal skills that can be developed.
Yeah. So within the energy industry, irrespective of what role you are in, these are complex problems, right? It's not something that you are assigned one job and then you sit on a laptop, code it out, and get done with that. It's not that straightforward. You are trying to develop a technical solution for a very complex problem. So the key and the most important skill set I feel you need to have is how well can you work with others without pissing them off and getting your job done. So the skill set that you need to develop is to be able to work well with people from diverse backgrounds, with diverse skill set, and then put forward your views in such a way that it doesn't offend anyone, while at the same time you are good enough that you're brainstorming a lot of ideas and then trying to find a viable solution to the problem that you are solving. The best part to do that is take as many projects as you can within your university, or do internships which require cross-functional teamwork. Work with people with different backgrounds, and I think that's the best part of studying at a US university, is that you get to work with a lot of people with diverse backgrounds all across your classes. So if you are doing a project within your class, don't just do that project with your friends that you really know. Try finding out team members who you may not have interacted at all within the course of your study, who may come from different places and have different backgrounds and different interests, and then try working with them to solve a common problem statement that you have on your project. In that terms, you bring your skill set to the table, while at the same time appreciate the differences that people bring to the table as well. So the most important skill set I believe within this industry is to be able to work across different backgrounds with different people, and university is the best place to develop that skill set. So work with as diverse team members as you can within your particular projects at your class.
So Sriram, that means, as you mentioned, that you get to work with people from a lot of diverse background. So that means it's these roles are not strictly not restricted to people who have like mechanical engineering background or maybe industrial engineering background. You can have different type of engineering degrees, and then you can jump into these roles.
Yes, yes. That's the beauty of it. So within the energy industry, you have basic concepts, right? Power, energy, voltage, current, resistance, and all of that stuff. That basic knowledge translates across all of these different engineering branches. You need to know them to understand how the energy industry works. That being said, you specialize in one of the uh, skills that you are trying to develop through your time at college. Then your job role typically revolves around working on stuff that is relevant to your particular background. That being said, every problem or every technical solution that you develop has a cost associated with it and needs implementation on the ground. So you work with people on the civil and construction side. You work with finance people to understand the cost associated with your solution. You understand with project development people who would actually implement your solution. So the concepts remain the same within the energy industry, but then at the same time, you you can jump onto different roles such as these, because the skill set that you have is translatable, is what I meant to say.
Okay, cool. So we have another question from one of our participants is, what's the next step for you in your career from senior sales engineer position? So what are the different career paths that you can choose from here?
So I work closely with the customer. So a customer facing role in any aspect is a good fit for me. I can go into business development, where I am required to work with internal teams to evaluate markets where Tesla can get into, because I I have a good visibility on where the market is moving in terms of regulations that are coming up within the different energy markets and how the federal policy and the state policy is going to shape that. I can definitely move into business development where I develop new markets for Tesla to enter. I can get into a pure sales role where I can manage a customer relationship, um, and walk them through the overall pre-sales process for the Tesla products. Alternatively, I can move back to a more engineering specific role, starting with product management, where I would again look at the market trends, talk to the customer to understand what specific technical needs that they have, and develop a product roadmap working with my engineering team to bring out new products for Tesla. Or I can get into a more engineering specific role where I can implement projects, where once the project is sold, it goes to project engineers, where they typically work with the customer, solve their interconnection for uh, challenges, permitting challenges, and actually implement the project. So the scope that I can get into is varied. Personally, I feel I work best with the customer. So if I move at all to a much broader role, then that would be much more customer facing. So sales and business development is the next aspect that I'm explore.
Thank you. And we have one more question from our participant. So what are the entry level positions available for undergraduate students who have just completed their mechanical engineering degree or industrial engineering degree? And what are the positions available for people who have done their master's degree and have 3 to 5 years of experience?
For entry level positions with mechanical or industrial engineering degree, mechanical design engineer is a good role. Associate product manager is a good role. Um, and then within design engineering, it can be very specific to the field of study that you have worked on. And that typically is when you have done your master's and um, did some specialization, such as acoustic engineering, reliability engineering, all sort of that roles. But a person straight out of college with a mechanical industrial degree, design engineers is a good role. Associate product managers is a good role. Um, uh, Mechanical engineering worked with a lot with on the thermal side, so thermal engineers would also be a good role. Within the energy industry, it's not just about generation. It can be with energy efficiency, so energy efficiency engineer or HVAC engineer. And in oil and gas industry, again, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer who specifically work on a particular process within that oil field or within that refinery. At the consulting side, you can be an associate consultant where you look at energy markets, work with your clients to understand what should be their next investment, or how should they hedge their oil and gas prices to maximize their profit and minimize their risk. For a renewable energy company, how to develop, which markets should they actually enter, what sort of product that they should procure, and what sort of project should they actually put out. So there are varied roles. It would be tough for me to pinpoint on one single role, but there are a lot of entry level roles. And for master students, it would be depending upon your specialization. Within that particular branch of engineering, you can go much deeper. So energy as an industry is not something very different from all the other industry. So it has its own concepts, power, energy, uh, current, and all of that stuff. But at the same time, the branches of engineering remain the same for that particular industry as well. So if you're doing anything, I'm pretty sure you'll have a role within the energy industry. It's just that you need to find a good fit.
Thank you. So again, I'd like to take a pause here to allow our participants to ask question. So if anyone has any question, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, so we have got one question on the chat. So what resources should student refer to prepare for roles at Tesla and in the energy sector? Are there any websites, any blogs, any specific books that you'd like to refer?
I can speak to Tesla. For the other industries, let me try to touch upon it. For Tesla, Tesla works on renewable energy projects, and those renewable energy projects are mostly made with storage, energy storage, lithium-ion energy storage, and then solar. So if you're getting into Tesla, then you're expected to know what energy storage is, how does it work, and what are the different technologies that are available for energy storage. So there is a website called batteryuniversity.com. That, to be sure, if I remember, that's the correct name. Within that website, you get a very good level explanation on all the technical concepts associated with energy storage. That is something that you can use to develop your technical knowledge about energy storage. And then take up a course on photovoltaic cells to understand solar technology on a broad manner. I wouldn't say going total depth, but you should understand how PV panels work, how do you generate solar energy, and all that stuff. Then, second thing that Tesla looks for is a good understanding of what the company's mission is, and are you willing to put in a lot of work and time of yours to realize and help company realize that particular mission. So how you can demonstrate that interest is to learn everything that you can about Tesla, its projects, and where does its products fit into in the broader market. And then reaching out to people at Tesla to understand their particular job role, again, depending upon what sort of role that you're looking at. And the third thing is, again, important to develop that cross-functional skill set, where Tesla as an organization is very lean. You're expected to do a job of 2 or 3 people, and no sane person can do everything by himself. So you need help of somebody or the other from the other team to help you get the job done. So it's very important for you to be able to work well with others. And a big part of that is to develop that interpersonal skills that I alluded to before. And you can do that by working in as many team-based projects with as many diverse people that you can.
Mm-hmm.
For other industries, again, it's the same concept that you can apply to get a job in the other industry. I haven't been associated with oil and gas or nuclear a lot, so I'm not specifically aware of specific websites that you can go, but it's the same. You need to know the technical, at least have a basic understanding of the technical stuff that the particular industry alludes to, be able to demonstrate interest within that particular role and company, and be able to work well with people. So those are the 3 main aspects to get a job anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very helpful. So we have got one question from multiple people here, and I think you've already answered this question, but if you can talk about it again, maybe people are more curious about it. So how can a freshly new engineering graduate without any work experience get a job at Tesla? I think you already talked about some entry-level roles, but if you can talk about it again, that'll be very helpful.
Oh, so getting a job at Tesla as a fresher is easier than getting a job with experience, because a lot of the work that's done at Tesla is by interns or by new grads. Uh, so new grads and interns are the most motivated people you can have, and they are not the costliest resource that you can have as a company. So Tesla hires a lot of interns and new grads. That being said, if you don't have any relevant experience, so what I would suggest you is one, within your university, work on projects that are similar to the role that you're looking at. So if you want to become a mechanical design engineer at Tesla, then do some design projects at the university. Try getting an internship somewhere which would help you design products. So build that experience. It need not be through a full-time job. It can be through the projects at your university as well as an internship that you may do off the university. And then network with people at Tesla. So Tesla has a pretty robust internship program, and they offer internships from 3 months to 6 months, where you can work on real-time problems. And once you demonstrate excellence in what you do, then they are more than happy to extend you a full-time offer if there is an opening within that particular team. So need not worry at all if you don't have a direct full-time experience. Try getting relevant experience to the role that you're looking at through internships or projects at your university. Work under a professor or work with some of your classmates that you really gel well with and develop something, right? Write out, put out a report, do some research and analysis, put out a report and share that on your LinkedIn profile or share that with the person that you're trying to reach out for a job. And then if you get a chance to choose the project that you do at the class, tailor that project to something that you eventually want to end up working with. So work experience in a big company for a full-time job for at least 1 or 2 years is not at all required to get a job at Tesla.
So I think that's a good news for everyone. Okay. So the next question that we have is, okay, how's the company culture in general? I think you already talked about the work-life balance, but if you can talk about other pieces like the team culture at Tesla, or if company has any learning initiatives for employees, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So in Tesla, it's pretty flat organization. So above me, there is my manager, VP, and Elon. So there are only 3 levels. And then on a same level, you have multiple people. And then when you work on this project, you work with these multiple people, and then you collaborate with them. So because everyone is a small team, they have a lot of work to get done in a very short period of time. By default, collaboration is something that comes out naturally. So collaboration and teamwork is a big driver within Tesla. So that is something that I really like and look forward to while going to office, because a lot of smart people who are highly qualified come and work at Tesla, and then you get to work with them on a day-to-day basis and you get to learn with them. So that is something that I really cherish working at the current role that I have at Tesla. The second thing is it's very fast-paced. 3 months down the line, nobody knows how the company would look like. You've seen from the tweets and how things have been in past 3 months with all the ramp up on the Model 3 production, all the attention that you have in the press. So it's a very fast-paced environment. And if you look at the pace in terms of actual quantitative numbers, in Q1 of 2019, we were producing around 1,000 cars per a quarter. Now we are producing around 5,000 cars per week. So that's the level of ramp up that you have at the company in terms of volume and scale. So it's very fast paced. And in terms of learning opportunities, it's like you get to work on so many different things in a very short period of time. So we joke around Tesla that 1 year in Tesla is equivalent to 3 years in any normal company that you can work with. So you don't have as in you have in a traditional company or a big company, employee development programs or training programs. Your job is your training program where you get to ramp up and work on a lot of different things in a very short period of time.
Cool, that's really helpful. And as we are reaching at the top of the hour, I'd encourage everyone to share their questions, as we'll take like one or two more questions at the max. So here we have one question from Israel. If we are currently working on a design project, is it important to have the work completed before we present it to the recruiters? Or should we present the current status of the project?
Good question. No, it's not required that it needs to be completed. So say, for example, you're talking to a recruiter. Tell him or her that, I'm working on this and this project, and our final aim is to solve this problem. Now, for a recruiter, it's not important whether you have achieved that or not. It's important what's important for the recruiter is what is the experience that you had gained from that particular experience. So you can say, what are the key technical decisions that you took? What are the key challenges that you have faced, and how did you overcome some of them? What was it like working with different people within your team to solve that technical challenge? So it's not important that you have completed that project while talking to somebody. It's important that you share your process of going through that project, the challenges that you have faced, what you have learned from it, and what are the key experiences that you have had until now. So if that answers your question.
Okay, perfect. And one question that we have received, and I think we missed it at the beginning, it should be asked at the beginning of the call. What's your typical work day at Tesla, or if you can talk about your work week, if you get a specific task for a week, or do you have a defined day, or is it pretty random?
It's pretty random, to be frank. So in my role, I need to work on multiple projects at the same time and manage multiple customers at the same time. So typically, a lot of my 9 to 5 time goes off with the meetings that I have with different stakeholders. So if there is a project submission deadline, if you're trying to bid into a project that an RFP was issued by a company, so I need to develop the proposal, and I need to work with my finance team, product management team, and engineering team. So a lot of my time in the morning, from Monday to Thursday, goes off in the meetings that I have with these team members to solve that project. And parallelly, I try to multitask and get my personal stuff done. And then from 5 to around 6:30, 7 p.m. is where you get some personal time. And it again depends on when you start the day. You can come in early, have that 1 or 2 hours of personal time to get your stuff done. And then rest of the time, you need to work with others. My role is particularly cross-collaborative role. So I need to have multiple meetings all across the day. And that is typically my day-to-day activities from Monday to Thursday. Friday is when I have the least number of meetings. So I get a lot of time during that particular day to get my stuff done and get my deliverables in place. So that's how my day works. It again depends if you are an engineer working on a particular product. What I've seen from our engineers is that typically on Monday they have a stand-up meeting where the team discusses their weekly priorities and challenges that each of the team members may have and who needs to help whom. And then the rest of 2 or 3 days, you spend your time working on that particular problem, working with cross-functional teams if you need somebody's help to solve that problem. And then on the final day, deliver something at the end of the week to your team member or whoever is your end customer, the final deliverable. So that's how a work week looks like at Tesla.
And here's the final question of the day. So have you ever got chance to meet Elon Musk, or have you ever seen him in Tesla? If yes, what it was like?
I've seen him, but nobody prays that they get a chance to meet Elon. Not that he's a bad guy or he bites, It's just that if you have to see Elon, then that means there is a problem that maybe your team or you haven't been able to solve, right? So that's the reason he has come out and reached out to you directly to meet him. So for Elon, he doesn't like bullshit. So if you're not straight to the point, and if he feels that you haven't put in an effort uh, to get stuff done in the meaningful manner that he expects you to do, then there can be repercussions. So nobody personally hopes that they get a chance to meet Elon. That being said, I've seen him during uh, quarterly company update and all of that stuff. And he's typically, no matter what level of pressure the company is in or what shitty situation the company is in, always found him that he puts in a brave face and then um, raises hope as to what are the steps that we need to target and achieve to meet the final goal that he's aiming to. So all the noise that you have on the social network is very different than what he typically functions at the company. And he is a very hands-on CEO. So if he finds there is a problem, he will get in there and work with you to get that done. So short answer, no, I haven't met him, and I hope I don't meet him. But yeah, I've seen him in person. He seems fun. He doesn't seem too yeah too dangerous.
Cool. So thank you so much, Sreeram, for your time, for your advice, for sharing your insights. It's really, really helpful for all of us. And I hope participants have learned a lot from this webinar. So thanks again.
Yep. Thank you, Aditya. Really glad I could be on this platform, and I hope and I wish everyone best of luck in their job search or internship search in whatever stage that they are in. Yeah, best of luck.
Okay, awesome. So as the final steps, uh, okay, so I'd like to thank all the participants as well for taking time on the weekend to interact with us, for sharing their questions with us. And here are the next steps. So we'll send you a short survey. It'll be a 1 or 2 minutes of survey. If you can take out a few minutes and let us know how we did in this webinar, what else we can improve, and what are the speakers that you'd like to see in future, and from which companies. We'll be more than happy to schedule webinars. We organize 2 to 3 webinars every single week. So your inputs will be very, very helpful. With the survey email, you'll also get a High Counselor introduction deck, which will tell you more about what our platform is, how we can help you land your dream job, how you can connect with the industry experts. And as I said, we conduct a lot of webinars, so you can expect, you can keep on checking our website, our YouTube channels for all the previous webinar videos. And for all the future webinars, we'll keep you posted. And as you can see, we have counselors from all the companies like Google, Facebook, Tesla. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions, and we'll be always happy to help you in your job search. And thank you so much for your time. You all have a wonderful weekend. See you soon.